So we're still learning this whole thing.
We're still learning this thing. Generally, I think so. It's hard to... Let me minimize.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay, alright. So, yeah.
Oh.
When you do that, it moves the thing.
But I'm short, so I need to sit up, like, on the couch.
You need to sit up there, and I'll sit here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be in the background. Yeah, so sorry about that. We're still having technical difficulties, but we seem to have everything figured out in terms of recording. It seems to work. So hopefully you're getting this, and we apologize for all the interruptions.
Right, and now I'm going to minimize Firefox because...
It's distracting as shit.
It's distracting to watch yourself.
Like lagging by a minute.
Lagging by a minute. Yeah, so, and we don't expect this to probably get too many people watching.
Not this first time.
Not this first time, although we have an assistant in the room who's watching along with us.
He's a little intoxicated.
What?
Drunk face. So, that was kind of our first question. So responses to that, how did you feel about the all-female pronouns? I thought it was really nice, but I did notice it. It was jarring at first, definitely. After a while, it comes to feel a lot more natural. So that stories like this, but this was the only one that was like completely all the way through.
Yeah, because usually it's like it's a very peaceful, like, like a good, like, well-integrated society, and that's not the problem. And the conflict comes from when male characters enter the story.
Absolutely.
Which is what happens in When It Changed, and there's a similar problem in Houston, which we'll be reading later this summer for this. So, but basically, it's...
And When It Changed, too.
Yeah,
right.
When It Changed, and When It Changed is from the point of view of one of the all-female, and then Houston is from the point of view of a male astronaut who, like, accidentally stumbles upon this society and is like, wait a second here. And in both of them, like, it's implied that the core problem with the society is that, not by the author, but by the men in the story, they're like, the problem with this society is that there are no men in it. And the authors are like, no. But I liked this because it presupposes it's not going to be a utopia. It's not like one of those things where people are like, well, if a woman was president, there would be no war. Because there would still be war,
Absolutely. So, I guess that we could talk about our next question. I mean, what about Jeep? What do we feel? Do we feel like it's realistic world building, stuff like that? I think it was fabulous. I believed it. The virus is believable. It seems pretty legit.
And I felt like because sometimes when you're doing there's a huge corporation and they're interacting with a supposedly scientific government agency, like Marge is there that have nothing to do with the company, but she has to utilize their resources in order to get there. And, when you're dealing with, in fiction, shady, large corporations, sometimes it can get a little too, like... Heavy-handed, like, look at the math. The believability, or at least just kind of, like, my ability to be sucked into everything. Because I'm just thinking about how ridiculous everything is.
But that said, I mean, so we've got the company, right? We've got this corporation. We don't really know a whole lot about. We don't really find out a whole lot about. They seem to control a lot of things. We might have men and women in this small sector of the universe. They seem to just have women just because they are more likely to survive the virus. So we have that power structure. We also have the power structure of all of the mirrors, which is another interesting question for later.
Right.
What is a mirror? Is it Haitian that we don't really know about? So we have the mirrors having their own structure on Jeep. We have the scientific crew, right, in the little ship.
I can't remember what exactly it's called, but yeah, and it's interesting that the scientific ship, even though they're not, are still all female.
Right, because they might have to get sent down to the planet, and they deal with decontamination of the female residents. What is it called? I would like to remember. Estrada. Duh.
Yeah, Estrada.
And I call her French, Marguerite.
Okay.
Right?
Alright.
I don't know. That's what I would call her. In my head while I read. Because I feel like we're friends now.
Yeah, well, that's... Well, is it like what's her full name? Is it
Marguerite...
Okay, and it still has the H in it, right? So it would be like Margaret.
French influence. I don't know, clearly.
My sister in Margaret-based names. Megan is a name with Margaret. And Marguerite is one form of Margaret. And now you know. I wasn't looking up name etymology last night.
Of the mirrors, that's kind of interesting. We've got them operating on this planet, all women again. And so what I love about this book, probably one of my favorite things, is anytime you have a military novel, they're really clear to distinguish, here's where the men sleep and here's where the women sleep and here's how everything works well together. But instead of like explaining how the military machine works, what Griffith does really well is she puts it in the through her interactions. So it's a really female, feminine, characterized way of coming about this knowledge. Like, we don't see it through the processes or like the maps of the place. We see it through the people actually talking and communicating and learning who to trust.
Yeah, and usually in stuff, you know, in narratives like this, usually whoever's the commander of the planet, you know, it's like, oh, I'm working for the corporation. And I mean, she is, but she doesn't like what they're doing.
Absolutely not.
And she...
Danner, right?
Yeah, Danner.
Danner, yes.
Danner. Like, she empathizes and sympathizes with not only the rest of her crew, and she, you know, and she understands where Margie's coming from to some extent. And she tries to cooperate with her, and she tries to be diplomatic. So it's not like she's just this, like, gung-ho military personnel, like, oh, we're gonna just... You know, like, just that really stereotypical kind of thing. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that she's...
One thing that does, like, that has to do with the fact that everyone's female is that Griffith really avoids these female stereotypes, especially of women in the military or women in power, right? She's not the butch lesbian, like, oh yeah, I want to kill something. In fact, what really stood out to me is early when Danner's reading through Margie's file, and she's like, why would I care about her sexual orientation? To later find out, right? But in the beginning, we have no idea to our voyeuristic tendencies. I'm like, why won't you tell me?
Right. And yeah,
it just leaves it, and Tanner's like, oh, I don't care. And it's like, it wouldn't even matter to her. Right, and that makes her more human in a way.
Right.
But also more of a mirror.
And also with the two, like, it's not even really, I don't think, stated explicitly, but the two of the people who go with Margie on the first leg of her
that they're in love, right?
That they're in love, and it's not even really...
I have a hard time with
the
names.
It's the communications engineer
shoot.
And the security
Lu Wei and Letitia.
And it's not, like, it's not stated outright, and you kind of get that sense at first when you're watching them from Margie's perspective. And then later, like, Danner says it outright. But it's not, like, a big deal or anything, and it's not even saying it like that. It's just like, you can tell, like, they're in love, and it's like, that's just a thing.
I mean, lesbian is not used. Lovers,
right?
Sisters, friends, partners, but not lesbian. So I really appreciated that because it did make it seem a little bit more alien. Instead of just being like, able to read this book.
Right.
Now, we're women reading it, so I'm curious to have male perspective on this, too. Somebody who might feel even more uncomfortable reading lots and lots of female pronouns than we would.
Yeah.
Not used to it.
And then you get, eventually you get used to it, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, let me see if I can actually pull it up. Very interesting laptop. You know what we could do? We could tweet, like, the individual questions.
Oh, yeah, we totally could. That's a good idea.
So,
shit. I don't really tweet. I'm a Twitter expert. Do the female pronouns. You could just take out the, if we're trying to keep it under the line. Female pronouns. Way You Read. Ammonite by... hashtag. There you go. Awesome. You are way better at Twitter than I am. Not the first question. My second question was about the power structures. And so we talked a little bit about company. Talked a little bit about the mirrors on this planet. So what I thought... Where's your charger?
It's right under the couch.
Here we go. That's alright. No, it's not. That's good.
Now we've got power.
Yes.
Obviously, I still don't have internet. operating at a remote location yet to be named.
Yet to be named. It's a secret. A very remote location.
I do have spiders.
Yeah, I put it on my face yesterday.
Oh, no, you didn't.
It's in a jar. It's dead. So anyway, we've got this military base on G. What do we think of that? So they've been there for 5 years. They aren't doing a whole lot. They're kind of just hanging out. They're just kind of chilling at the base. And then they start decorating their little mods. Their bedrooms, basically. It's hard for me to imagine a mod. But it has a shower, so that's fabulous.
That's good. Yeah, it sounded, did not sound like the most fun place to be.
Like a cubicle. It's just one cubicle. But that's okay. So in your mod, you like decorate it if you think you're going to be there for a long time. They start making their own clothes, growing their own food, and finally Danner's like, hey guys, you should probably start testing out some different wood and material. It's interesting to be stuck on base on this alien world, and all you know is that you're there waiting.
Yeah, and it seems like it takes Danner a lot more time to internalize the fact that, oh wait, we're probably not going anywhere. This is probably it for us. We're going to be stuck on G.
Yeah. Did you really buy that? How long it took her? Because it seemed she picked up on a lot of Margie stuff. So that was one thing that I had a hard time suspending my disbelief for.
Well, I think it said that like she kind of like she knew, but she didn't.
She knew
really
all
want
along, but she didn't let herself know
that she knew. Yeah,
absolutely.
Because it was kind of leave the planet. Am I? Oh well, kind of thing.
And then you've got the power structure within Jeep already that existed for a long time. We've got some hints and clues that there was an ancient civilization before humans landed, right? So we've got these Ents through the trees, which is, my favorite part, of course, because the Ents are my favorite in Lord of the Rings. So I saw the connection immediately. I was like,
Just
yes. But no, it was my favorite because of that, so I was rooting for them. And then the humans crash land, and we get all of these really rich legends that come out of it. We get the virus. We get all kinds of stories about it. So we've got this storytelling aspect, but we've got this drive the, what are they called? The End people.
The End people.
The End people. Heavy driving.
What? Don't explain on the reading progress name.
Ents, can we call them Ents for now, and then I'll remember it?
We're going to call them Ents for now, and she's going to find it.
I'm going to find it. I really am. But anyway, do you want to talk on the island? I thought that was really... On the island.
On the island? It's not an island.
The world. Well, there are islands.
There are.
I just read the word island.
Right, well, the different, indigenous population of Jeep, like the... What is it? Air is something?
Okay, I can't say any of these names, so forgive me.
So, the, Margie, after she gets up into...
It starts with an E.
Yeah, it starts with an E. I'm good at other things besides names, but I'm not very good at names. So that captures her after she goes to, like, the kind of Stonehenge circle-y thing. Like, there's a very, like, distinct while to figure out. Like, there's a leader that's, like, the
Lavark.
The Lavark, right.
Yeah, I got that.
And, like, she tries when she first gets there, and she's like,
Effie.
Yeah.
Effie. It spells it out. I think
it is Effie, right. Yeah, and she's just really hostile to her, and she's like the Lavark in training. I thought the translation of her title.
Absolutely. And then we've also got Waithne, who is trying.
That's not good.
That's really bad, but it's interesting how she uses myth to blend the groups together, how even though she's, killing people and all this blood and stuff, so obviously bad, but she uses myth and some of these, like, traditional female powers, like the power of speech, things like that are traditionally associated with men, right, or seduce with words or seduce in song, and she uses this power too. Why are you making faces? Faces. To seduce the other group. And
yeah, one of the things I found really interesting, just like from an etymology standpoint, was like how all of the different places are named, like
Absolutely.
like Effie and her, like
super Gaelic.
right, like that's extreme. It's hardcore Gaelic, which is not even
Hardcore Gaelic.
It's hardcore
That's right.
Gaelic.
So.
It is though. It is hardcore Gaelic,
absolutely.
which is not a language, that a lot of people speak.
Right, and so the explanation, put them in a different order, I think, on the website. Sorry, I gotta sit down here. So my next question, I guess, that I wanted to talk about was how do I phrase this? And is how does the superpower that like each person kind of acquires or seems to acquire, like this them, how does it change a person? And like, does it matter that the superpowers they seem to be acquiring are like female superpowers? They're all feminine things. For way from madness almost, like her ability to just laugh at anything and just be violent, which is something very commonly associated with women. I mean, women going mad,
right,
harming each other, harming themselves.
And how that's distinctly different from kind of like a male sort of
madness. Or it's not like well, it's not a Frankenstein monster either, right? Like she has and then killing, so it's a little bit different. She's got that madness thing, and it's like she's believing in this made-up world. So Margie gets like the ability to garden really well. Like she can start like hearing the plants telling her where they want to be planted. And when I say it's like she knows where the plants want to be planted.
Right. Well, and it's really weird because it doesn't really. I mean, I think it's really weird considering who she is, because she doesn't really mention any kind of specific affinity.
Very interested in breathing and breath. Right, so she's got all the Tai Chi training and all of that, which is fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really interesting. It made it more believable that she could do this meditation thing that's required. The plants, yeah, where did that come from? But then she gets this, like, plant gift. I think it might have something to do with the fact that she doesn't have any roots.
Ooh!
Metaphor! Right,
I gotcha now.
But right, it does kind of seem like symbol. So she's got this gardening thing, which is cute. And then you've got this, like, journey woman, like, telling stories, healing, all of these really feminine characters. I forget her name. The one who rescues her as she's wandering in the snow, Leia. Whatever. The one who kills the ant-like creature. Use her, and her skill is like hunting and carving, and automatically we're set to distrust her because everybody else distrusts her, and they're like, oh well, she's family. But you get the feeling that something constantly stressed as being weird is that she goes off hunting by herself,
right?
And that she sits at home and she values possessions, right? So she wants to carve all these things in her house. She likes to keep people and like keep them close. So that's impulse. The ant thing, I really need to figure out the name.
Right. Do you have the power outlets in your
Yeah, right here.
Not very long.
Yeah, they're under here.
Okay. Oh, slow.
Yeah. So, I thought that was really bizarre because, right, you're not just in this book with all women and then they have male characteristics, and I'm like, okay, cool. At least there are some people, not just like everything's great and kumbaya.
Right.
But
kind of say that male characteristics are bad characters.
Well, that's what you're assuming when you're reading a book with all female characters, right?
Right, because there is no maleness in the world, that means everything's going to be okay. Kind of thing, does that
there will be male characters that come in and mess everything up.
They're the problem. Well, and that's kind of like, and that idea, I guess, is kind of like what's nurturing, where that's not the case here.
So I've got a question for you.
Go.
So do you think this is second wave feminism, or does this get to count as third wave? Because I can see the argument going either way, because a lot of ways it's definitely second wave. It's very much, these are all women living alone, using these feminine powers of introspection and like attuning with their own body. And that's pretty second wave, like we don't need men, yay.
Well, I think that the fact that there is conflict among the women, and there's a diverse range of conflict. There's scientists.
There's heartbreak, there's starvation, there's real world shit.
Right, so I think it would be more second wave because the external problem is not men, and it's not necessarily male characteristics.
Right, no, it's just like the natural world and humanity.
Right, so that women are humanity, and they come with all of the problems. Gender is absent doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory. And so I feel like that makes it more third wave.
I would agree with that assessment. I don't know that it's like personalizing gender roles, right? These are all women, and they are pretty womanly women, even the masculine ones.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see very many of them like cross-dressing. I mean, you don't get a lot of description of their outfit, and I don't know that there would be a point to cross-dress in a world full of women. And you do see the bare-breasted women on the ships, right? You see them. You don't see them.
We do not see
picturing them in my head.
We do not see them, no.
It's unfortunate because they were hot. Because it was very, very hot on this planet. Very hot. So this was my first question, was do we think this is still humanity? My first question posted online, but probably the third one on Twitter. So do we think that this can count as humanity with just women? And I think you already answered this. Yes answer. But why? So what makes up humanity then? I think is a more interesting question.
Right.
Makes up humanity.
Yeah.
Who have lived and been stranded on this planet for hundreds of years. No human contact. Okay, so this colony settles. No outside contact. They've been living with these and reliving the same kinds of things over and over, but don't have much memory beyond that, and they have no outside contact. How do they still have human characters? They do the same things we do that are so human to us that we can look in the book and be like, hey, I recognize that. And don't just be like, hey, because it's, something a human wrote. Because that's shitty. I hate that. I mean, obviously that's the answer, but what do they do that are recognizable? Obviously love.
Right, they still,
Love is still such an important thing, and you can't force love on anybody, and I really like that idea.
Right.
That even when there was a duty to love,
you couldn't force it.
You can't force it. You could try, but there's no forcing what can't be done. And I like that idea. Like, that's something not, like, knowing where that barrier is, like, between love and duty. Something that we see all over Shakespeare. Right. So that's pretty human. That's something we see a lot. What the Jeep people, Jeepsters?
The Jeepsters. Well, I thought, like, you brought up earlier that, like, the term that, the word lesbian is used to distinguish and separate out women who love other women as different from another
normal
group.
Women, right?
Right.
It's different from normal, and then there's lesbian.
The normal thing, the idea of heterosexuality is the norm, and homosexuality is a deviation from that norm. But there is no norm like that.
No.
On Jeep.
No.
Because there's no,
there's men.
There's no men.
That there are males of, like, different species.
Right,
and then yet there are only females. Because it's like, you seem like you would be aware of that. Like, if there's a male...
Right.
What's that thing coming out of its belly?
Right, like when they used, like, male or they used him at some point. When they were referring to animals, I was like, wait, they even have a male pronoun?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So, that's good. They understand that there can be sexual dimorphism, but there just isn't.
Right, it's not like the old man.
Right.
That kind of thing. The 60s Star Trek. That is a line in Star Trek.
One thing, not really gender or sexuality, but related to both, like ego.
Yeah.
Generally, you have this portrayal of the other as really, really ignorant. And you get the idea that as the captive, usually the white captive, she assimilates and learns their ways and values their culture, but they're still simple in a lot of ways. This book does not do that, so if you're looking for something that doesn't do that, this is it. Even more so than the base culture, right, where at Central, all the mirrors are staying inside. They will not come out of their little fence. Is like, oh, well, those savages, we can't do that. And everyone else is like, oh, that's so stupid. And you're in the book at the point where that comes up along through Margie.
Right. Yeah, and it really, because, like, if you read, because Margie's narrative is in some ways, the basic structure of it is in some ways similar to, like, the old school, like...
Gulliver's Travels.
Right, or, like, white woman get... Right, and so now she's, she has to learn how to assimilate to their culture, and it's weird, and, and it definitely, like, really
No.
shitty archetype kind of thing.
No.
Like, oh, they're different, but they're better, and that's our way of making ourselves feel better about the fact that we're simple.
And how much of that story arc, and not, this is really near the end of the book, so I don't give, but how much of that story arc in terms of her time in the snow, I always say that wrong, the one that's named after the one in Peru. Mexico?
It's a
You know Mexico's in North America, right?
yeah, I know, but that's a
I'm not sure. Anyway, up on the plateau. I'm really bad with names. I should have written that. I'm sure there are some people that would be very happy to believe that.
I don't know.
A big wall and just like keep them on their side.
Yeah, that is clearly not what I meant.
I know that's not what you meant.
That is clearly not what I was watching now. Hello, 6 people.
Hi, 6 people.
Damn it.
I think 2 of them are us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. Whatever.
Hi, 4 people.
Hi. So yeah.
Hold on. I was on a rant about
You
something.
were.
Explore. So when she's up on the plateau, that whole story arc's about hope and change. So she's stuck there, and she is basically dying of depression. She won't eat. She won't do anything. And she's like, I'm going to run away into the snow. This is a great plan. I'm never going to live. And, you know, of course she lives because there's more than half of the book left. You know, I appreciate that. George R. R. Martin.
Cough. George R. R. Martin cough.
Cough. So thanks for not killing off everyone I love, but that whole storyline revolves around hope and change. In order to be able to succeed as a people, they're going to have to change. And so I think the way that those two kind of storylines are intertwined is interesting. And it's not the noble savage. It's not keeping the old ways. It's not any of that. It's not privileging this other way of doing things. It's going, oh shit, there isn't enough food up here. I guess we have to move south and be farmers. Like,
right.
Because there just isn't enough food. Your kids are being born, you know.
Yeah, and I was worried starting out with the anthropology angle because so often, anthropology in itself can be.
It turns into a rape of the land, right?
Yeah.
A glorified, long, painful rape of the land, of the people.
Right.
Like, we're going to get where we don't really belong. And
right. And I wasn't looking forward to that, and I wasn't looking forward to that, oh, you other people are doing this. And so there's just this antagonism between, the outsiders and the insiders, between the native population and the exploratory.
To feel like she can connect with these people on this planet that she's never been to, is that she feels so disconnected from the mirrors. She feels so far away from company and mirrors and that whole military culture. She feels really disenfranchised. So, that obviously makes a difference, but how come she feels so disenfranchised? Obviously, her beating on that one planet. Beaver, right? How could I forget? Planet Beaver.
And
it's hilarious.
Because of what we know about the author. It's not like an Orson Scott Card Buggers thing where you're like, did he know or did he not? You know
he knows
that was an intentional naming. And I was wondering, I was like, why?
She got beaten on beef. It's alright.
It took away some of the, sad, oh no.
It did.
Violence.
It made it more like, okay, this is a thing that happened. We're not going to talk about it because it's on Planet Beaver. Planet Beaver. The mining planet. So go ahead and dig into that. We have some other symbols for you. Okay, so there's clouds that swirl around and look like mother of pearl. In this perfect round orb, and they just swirl and pulse. Anyone else seen clitoris? Just me, mother of pearl.
No, I think
that's pretty obvious, right? And
with the when Margie comes across the all the different stone pillars and stuff like that, she's like, "This is weird. These are older than the civilization of women." Because it's there's a phallus here.
There's some phallus on this plane,
right? Which isn't to say that women
can't make phalluses, just that they hadn't, and these were old balls. That's right. It's an industry term.
It's an industry term. What industry is that a term? Old balls. Yeah, it's just, like it's like
It's
so
old, and men had made it. Old balls.
right. No, it's okay. I'll roll with it.
Right.
Yeah, and which also isn't to say that all women necessarily have vaginas and all men have penises, but
Right. Certainly not.
right. But at the same time, it's just like
Well, I think in this world, that is pretty much the case.
right because it
That
would be
sex and gender are really, I had a problem with as
Right.
somebody who's genderqueer. Because I think in this book, I'd just be like, well, yeah. I mean, I guess like 200 years down the road, if I didn't know any men, I'd just be like, oh yeah, this is what I am, and I wouldn't see myself any
Right.
differently.
right because anyone who is born biologically male, like the
So they would all die off, and they can only produce women.
right.
Huh. Yeah, it's weird. So yeah, gender and sexuality become really conflated. Well, sex become really conflated, and then sexuality is its own thing. You get the feeling that a lot of women just opt not to have sex instead of having lesbian sex. Instead of taking a lover, as the book would call it, right?
Right.
You get the option. You get the idea that a lot of women spend time alone, and that they live with their women that they live together with, not necessarily sisters in the sense we would consider sisters. But
Right. Yeah, the entire kind of like familial structure
is
a
very
lot
different. Yeah.
Right, because it's not just like, like parents, children, extended family who are biologically related. It's much more of a choice, it's like a choice-based thing.
It is. So map this out. So it's pretty complicated. You have your biological mother who can either go in, like, meditate and turn herself pregnant with her own genes and create a clone, basically, of herself as she is right then. Okay. Mother can take a lover and they, like, touch fingertips. Just for demonstration purposes.
Okay.
And we're like laying in bed and being lovers and stuff. Sorry, Odessa. And we're being lovers and stuff.
And now we're
And now I go in your body mentally, yeah. And I go to your ovary, and you go to mine, and we've been spending so much time together that we're ovulating at the same time.
Okay.
And now superpowers activate. I turn you pregnant, but not only do I turn you pregnant, but I flip some of the switches so that your recessive genes become dominant, and your dominant genes become recessive.
Okay.
And you do the same. And then our kids, even though they're not biologically related, and they're only biologically related to me or you,
Mm-hmm.
now look different than us, and we introduce genetic variation. That's option 2. There might be option 3. It's not totally clear, but I'm open to the possibility that there's an option 3 where I can go inside my own body and flip some of the switches.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that that's possible. And with identical
Right.
children
Mm-hmm.
that aren't soestre. And soestre then would be ours if we had twins at the same time, and they're like, but there's no biological bond, there's a mental and like psychic bond.
Mm-hmm.
The psychic energy is really privileged here.
Right.
Because when was this published? I mean, it's kind of a big deal at that time. New ways. And definitely an interesting idea. 92.
92.
So, really cool ideas. I don't know how much scientifically I'm buying it, but it doesn't feel
Right.
to have all these women doing these things. And, yeah, I don't know, I really, really liked it. And I liked that even the sex scenes weren't sexy, but they were emotionally strong. It didn't feel like I was reading Anne Rice. No.
Right,
Didn't feel like
books,
I was reading
there are books
porn.
that you do not read necessarily for the social commentary.
Right? No, this is definitely more social commentary and less porn. Though with a world full of gays.
Right, well, and I think that's nice because a lot of times, like when you have lesbian sex in books or in media, it's about like, oh yeah.
Oh, where's the guy watching this, right? Because
It's all being titillating and not about, it's not, the target audience is not other women.
right.
Target audiences.
So,
People who would be.
so question 4. You got me? You feel me? You got question 3. 4. Do you think that this book is expressly directed towards, like, a female readership? Intrigues me, because I don't know any men who have read it, just personally. This is my first reading of it. I enjoyed the shit out of it. But as somebody who's, like, queer gendered, like, it's different for me to be like, oh, yeah, as a guy in my head, yeah, I could totally see this, but I was also, raised a chick. So I see things.
Yeah, like, I would be really interested in hearing what, like, a cis dude had to say about this. Someone who...
Yeah, CIS cis, too. Not SIS cis.
A different thing, but a
cisgender. If a cis SIS dude would like to share his opinion, that would be fine.
Male opinions.
Yeah, I just think, it's something I'm kind of instructed on as an English grad student and as an English graduate, right? English studies graduate, and as a woman who's like been to high school and done some reading and taken advanced English classes. I've been instructed at all these different levels to look for the feminist message, to look for symbols, and to pick up on, times where pronouns are used. And so I'm really in tune with that, and I can notice it right away. But I wonder if it would creep up on anybody. I think that would be cool to find somebody full of women. I mean, they make that pretty obvious in the beginning, which I guess takes away a lot of that problem. But do you think guys would read this? Do you think guys would be interested in this? I think it has a lot of really good messages. I'm just thinking, how What's-His-Face said that they don't write any fiction for boys. I'm not saying any names.
Girls will...
The male audience, right. So I guess I'm curious, will this capture a male audience?
Right.
Does it have to? Obviously not. It's a super successful book. It's awesome. And, it's still being read with much seriousness today.
Yeah, it's award-winning. Well, and it's interesting because that also challenges the kind of overarching science fiction narrative as science fiction is a boys' club, which it definitely can be.
Largely it is, but unless we actually show up and do something about that.
Right, but it's the the notion that, not only are,
right,
and stuff like that there hasn't been...
That it has to be if it's by women, it has to be under a pseudonym and for a man.
Right, and that's the way it's always been done, where here we see a book that is written by a woman.
With, her name on the cover. Sorry, Tiptree, but,
Right.
Her name is
expressly on the cover, and it's a female name.
Yeah, and it definitely is.
And it's and if it's marketed only towards...
The cover I have is a little bit different than the one we posted. I think this is interesting. This is my library copy, if I can get it centered on the screen. Backwards camera is backwards.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, so it's got a spaceship. It's got Jeep in the background. Other way. And it's got some text here. And if you can't see really the red around it, that's a spaceship door. So that's like a port window. You can see out. And it says, right, GP, held the deadly virus and a biological mystery. And for one woman, a last chance.
Which is a much, and then if you look at the cover that we posted on the website and in the live stream, that's a much more... This was a book written by a woman kind of cover.
For a woman, right? It's got the Earth Mother kind of image going on. It definitely has...
the muted tone.
Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it.
Demeter, right? It's got the Greek goddess, the goddess of the hearth, right?
Right.
Very much. You feel like it's very homely and it's not presuming too much. But this is almost a hard sci-fi cover.
Right, this is a very sci-fi
Okay, so it's got planet on it, deadly virus, biological mystery, and it says, and for one woman. The whole planet's full of women on the cover.
Right.
Which I think is probably, if you're trying to attract a male audience, a good idea.
Definitely one way of getting
just
them
one woman, right? Oh, yeah, so when's she going to get laid?
Exactly.
Right? I'm just kidding. Guys are really like that. I hope not.
I hope not either. That's okay.
That'd be terrible.
The cover in the presentation novel is not anything that the author has any say in.
No, it's just interesting, the different versions.
The way it's marketed.
There's two different distinct marketing strategies there. And I like that, I wonder if I were going to, purchase this, which I probably will now because I love it. I read my library books for too long. Which one am I going to get? I think I'm going to get the one with the spaceship on the front because it looks like hard SF, and I don't read a whole lot of hard SF, so I'm going to have it to be like, look, here's my nerd cred.
Right. Well, and there's also the huge problem where the distinction between hard and soft because I can, because it is.
It is problematic.
Because the idea is like, well, hard SF is stuff that has science and physics in it, and soft SF is anthropology and social studies kind of things. But even the way that people draw those distinctions, like people will call Left Hand of Darkness soft SF. I think like, is Stranger in a Strange Land qualified as a hard SF novel?
Yes.
What, and that doesn't have that much. Like, please.
So, for example, in Ammonite, we've got lots of elements of hard SF. We have medical science, right? We've got
military,
spaceships. I think it's really cool that we have like the pills, the soft gels,
right? The F-17.
Yeah,
the vaccine.
The vaccine. That's the word I was looking for. So she's got this vaccine for her when the virus hits. We've got this medical narrative, which is really common in hard SF.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have, on top of that, the anthropological stuff.
Right.
And then as the book shifts toward the end, I think there is a shift. It starts off as very hard SF, very military, very much about health. And as Margie changes with the planet, it becomes way more about knowing things with your body and with your heart rather than your brain and different kinds of knowing.
Right, right. I'm just saying that Stranger in a Strange Land is not hard SF.
Right.
If Left Hand of Darkness is soft SF.
Sure.
The difference.
And obviously there are some problematic distinctions. I'm just saying most people are going to label apology. It's kind of like the one drop rule. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
This has anthropology. This is now soft SF.
Right, ignoring the medical narrative.
Ignoring all the other stuff. And then that's most of the books. But I wonder then, would Speaker for the Dead be soft SF?
See, yeah, exactly.
Right, because that's where I get confused. It's like, okay, because that's definitely an anthropological study that happens to have, Ender's Game behind it.
Right, because Ender's Game is always done as, this is a military SF story, so it's hard SF.
Right.
But dividing the genre into...
Right in two. Then,
right in two.
And that's usually where it occurs.
And then Speaker for the Dead, it takes place on an alien planet, but the main characters are all anthropologists and xenobiologists, and all of the science in it. I'm sorry, I've talked...
Nice scare quotes.
I actually interviewed the gender system of the piggies in Speaker for the Dead. I need you to tell me how this makes you feel. And she's like, it's magic.
We gotta talk about this book. We'll talk about Ender's Game next week.
Okay. But basically, like...
Ender's Game is next week, you guys. We're going to listen to it as we drive to Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
Ender's Game. I don't think you guys are ready for that. And we will actually have a guest next week.
Bobby Arn.
Yeah, Mr. Robert T. Arn, Bobby Arn of Colorado, to this. He doesn't read books, as he informs me, and he told me not to say that with too much condensation.
Which is, that's fine. I like audiobooks. It'll be interesting to see how his perspective on the novel
because he's never read it. He's never ever read it.
And he's only read it with Scott's particular intonation.
I think it'll be nice. So we're going to talk about that next week, and we'll talk more about some issues.
I'll hold that in. But anyway,
hold that in.
But basically, where do people draw the lines between hard and soft SF, and how much of that is because of the supposed gender of the person writing the book? That's writing and that's reading,
like who it's marketed towards. Because I also find that when it's marketed toward children, the Golden Compass, right, which is definitely speculative. There's some science in there, but it gets more to like the magic side of science, and because it's not so science-y, it's like, oh no, this is fantasy. We're going to put it in that corner.
Even though there are like alternate universes.
Right, and they're traveling between them. And it's like, oh no. Now that's in Jones. She gets ascribed to fantasy all the time. And there's a lot of science fiction going on there. So, not like I have a problem with fantasy, obviously, because I read a lot of it.
But it's interesting how
depending on the audience, it gets ascribed a different title. I think I had more questions. Let me try to think of them. I have them online.
Yeah, let me see if I can see them.
Do I have anything good?
Do you have anything good?
Yeah, I don't know. Good news, guys. I'll have internet by Monday, but then I'm going to Colorado.
I don't know how you did this for so long without internet.
I've lived a month without internet. I have internet at this remote location. It's a military secret. I told you I have to kill you.
So you have a question on here that's how do we feel about the biology in the
Oh,
novel?
good, because we were just getting to that anyway.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how do you feel about the biology of the novel?
So, like,
How does it make you feel? Like, I really want to know how it makes you feel, because, like, what it makes you think is, like, oh, this could never happen, human evolution shit. Sure. But, like, how does it make you feel? Like, if this could really happen, like, what if I could make myself pregnant?
Yeah, it makes me feel kind of weird, and also I would not want to bring another me into the world.
Right, but, like, say...
an exact genetic copy of myself.
So say you have a lover.
Okay.
I know, it's a stretch. So say you have this lover, and she happens to be female. This female lover, and you decide, you know, when you're older, that you want children.
Okay.
And so, instead of having sex one night, you touch your fingers together.
Which is just, it really is weird. Like, even, like, just how you describe it, I don't know, because it's not, like, an actual, like, biological mix of two different sets of genes.
No.
It's just, like, you're making a variation
on yourself.
I
don't think they do. It doesn't seem like they do.
Like, and, you know, like, that's a concern even if you're having, like, a biological kid. Is what's
our kid gonna be like?
Right, and, like, are any of our genes gonna interact in a way that's gonna create a kid that's gonna have certain...
Like, oh, you have this repressed gene, I have this repressed gene. Oh, fuck.
Right. We've accidentally given it...
Yeah.
What if you did that? What if you switched on some junk DNA and now your kid had a tail? Like...
Okay, see, I'd be totally fine with that.
I mean,
but I'd be really jealous of my kid.
Which would be kind of cool, but at the same time...
not something that really
you were necessarily looking
the human race. Yeah, so it's weird to think about. But, like, say, without the fiddling around part. Say,
that would be kind of weird.
Okay, so why is that weird? I mean, because why does that make us feel weird? Because I agree with you that it's weird. But why is it weird? Is it just weird because it's not the way things are done?
I mean, that might be part of...
I think another part is, like, it's like, oh, we've been having a lot of unprotected sex. Hey, here's a baby. Right? But...
And it's not something that's initiated, like, planned or unplanned through normal, like,
right. I mean, it can be
you.
planned, but it doesn't have to. But it's normal for you to fear or to think that you might be pregnant. But whereas, like, if usual sex, you kind of, like, go, well, what the fuck just happened, right?
Right.
But it's not like that. It's not normal sex. It's like you have to pause and consciously decide.
Right, it's a different, like, it's not, like, a part of your, like, normal sexual activity.
Right.
That results in this pregnancy. It's something that does not involve
it's an emotional, intimate thing, but it's not sex. Yeah, it's very hard, I think, for us to wrap our heads around it, just, like, as Americans, too. Like, we don't touch each other unless it's, like, for sexy times. Like, I had a really good friend in grade school who used to, like, hold my hand. And she didn't from Poland, and that's just what she did. And it made me really uncomfortable because kids would make fun of me, but they wouldn't say anything to her because she was from Poland. But I was from here, and I should have known better that, like, she shouldn't hold my hand. But in lots of other cultures, touching doesn't have that stigma that it has here.
Right.
It's very strange. I think in other places it wouldn't be as strange.
Yeah, I think it's specifically that it's kind of like a psychic thing, maybe. That definitely has something to do with it.
Well, and it's conscious. Like, it's a conscious decision. Like, you have to be aware of it. It's not like, oh, hey, let's test and see if I'm pregnant yet.
You know.
Right? You know as soon as it happens.
Which would also be kind
of... on. It's on. It's on like Donkey Kong.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's okay.
About pregnancy.
But, you know, that is weird because even if you're, like, trying to get pregnant and you're trying to get pregnant in other ways, like, whether it be through artificial insemination.
Right. You still don't know until you, like, take a pee test. There's no period of uncertainty, which I think makes it more final, even though you're still, you know, pregnant and the baby's not out yet. It makes it, like, almost immediate.
Right.
It really takes down the gestation period in your brain.
Right, exactly, because you know exactly from that second. All right, mark it. 9 months, let's go.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think that's...
And you know, a guy could read this book. 1,000 times and maybe never even like think about that, like what it would feel like to be pregnant. But I read this book once and I'm like, oh my god, if I were pregnant and I knew it, like immediately, that'd be terrifying.
Yeah, I want, because like with and I think part of the like having a period of uncertainty is like, okay, this could maybe not be a thing to think about. Like, I'm gonna have a kid and I'm gonna be responsible for this child, and also I'm gonna be like pregnant for 9 months, and I'm gonna like the pain that comes along with that, like having like a while to kind of like adjust to the thought.
I think Margie definitely does, which I think is really cool in the book, that she has these periods of uncertainty where she's like, hold on, I need to think about this, and she just like shuts herself off from decisions until she decides. And as the book goes on, these periods of decision become shorter and shorter and shorter until finally she's able to make these decisions. But it's like she has to relearn. There's just so much new information. And I think that's how a lot of people would feel if they went to a new planet. You have to be re-educated. And she's very open to it, even though she doesn't think she is.
Right, yeah.
But she does give herself less and less time to kind of recover from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You can come to a planet who are foreigners, too.
Absolutely.
Too, like, with the thing with the, it's not trade, it's the, what is it?
Trotta?
Like, right away, the first time she hears about it, she's like, alright, this is a thing we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. She picks up on that really quickly. Definitely the anthropologist training there, right?
Right, but it's weird because, you know, a lot of times anthropologists are trained, you know, no, don't interfere.
He's stuck on this planet, for better or for worse,
right.
really.
We might not want to interfere, but we gotta, like, right now. Because otherwise everyone's screwed. And she realizes that in, like, you know, Danner, you know, she lives on this planet for years and years, and she doesn't even know what Trotta is. Even though it seems to be a really important part of the culture.
And then she defies it, which is its own thing. So, yeah.
Right.
Trotta's interesting.
Trotta is
like a barter system. It reminds me a lot of what people talk about, like these maternalistic tribes instead of like paternalistic tribes that used to exist supposedly. And I don't know, it seems like a familiar concept, but just because I'd be interested to see some historical instances of something like that. Trotta makes sense, but
right, but it's still kind of,
it seems really fragile.
Right, yeah, like that could easily break apart alive, and you know, just getting basic supplies is that this kind of connection and this kind of, I mean, there's a lot of like trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Involved in that. Like, you have to trust that they're going to keep this agreement, because it's not like it's enforced. I mean, it is enforced by, you know, you publicly made this decision, but what kind of retaliation is there if you don't keep that promise?
Right, and what's interesting when Margie goes to the port town when she's pregnant is that the innkeeper, well, actually, it's not even the innkeeper, it's the Nike is like, hey, you need to, like, tell your leader, Tanner, that, you know, Trotta is for people we know. Like, it's for trust. And he's just figuring out, like, what kind of currency they use to pay for, like, boat trips, right? And these sailors, they travel a lot, so they don't know everyone. They travel a lot, and there's a lot of people in these port towns compared to the people in the smaller, established, like, universal currency. And currency is for people that you don't know. Currency is for strangers. I really like that idea. Like, Trotta is with people you know. And even if you don't know them, you know their parents or their grandparents, you know their mothers and their sisters. And because of the shared memory that they have this shared cultural memory that they can gain access to. Somehow the virus enables them to do that, and they're able to just deep search and cool. That they now are obliged to honor this, and they have the memory of it. So instead of, like, having a record keep the records.
Right, and that way, I mean, there's no dispute over, you know, did someone fudge with the records or whatever.
Yeah,
it's in memory.
It's like, in memory, right?
You can't fake it.
No, and then if you have Vaeha, you have somebody who can, like, sing the story of it back, and they know it's true. There's, like, which I do like. There was, you know, some issue with the sailor with the fake currency, who then like got put out of work. Basically, she's not allowed to sail anymore because she had this fake currency and was trying to use it to buy her night at the inn. And she had made her own. It's
the
that
currency,
the
which is for strangers,
right? But it's this deception that occurs, and now she doesn't have a job.
Right.
So it's like that's really a transgression compared to like on Earth where we lie all the time. It's no big deal. And lying is what you do to survive.
Right.
And in this world, it's just not. So I wonder if that's something that Griffith would say is like indicative of a female world or a female worldview. Or if it's just particular to this culture.
Like, everything is kind of predicated on having communities, which does seem like it's a more, like, this is what women do kind of thing. Like, everything is very
communal, right? Yeah.
Based. And, like with the, what are the huge...
Starts
with a T.
Twar. I'm so bad with names. I should have written everything down. I totally read this too, and I'm just like...
I was going to say we should do that for next week, but it's Ender's Game, so we don't need to. We don't need to do that.
I'll do it the next one. Yes.
Well, and yeah, like
the Tars, Taar, Tars.
Yeah, the Tars. Like, like early on when she joins their group, when Marge joins their group, she's like, well, they all seem to be kind of like in a communal space, even though obviously, like from what, you will be compensated for having to take care of this woman with like an extra tar.
Yeah.
Like there's obviously like individual ownership of them, but they're all like, herded and kind of like raised together in one group and everyone takes care of them. So there's a sense of, individuality and individual ownership and individual trade, but all communal, but also that's a very important part of their culture and keeping, just like keeping themselves alive.
Right. Hold on, I'm trying to find the name of the Ant People. Like that story I can remember their name is in. It's not in that part because it's told in first person. When the knife is telling the story. So it's before that.
Well, and also, like, so they don't have metal on tape,
right?
Which
is kind of hard for me to believe.
Right, yeah, like, ice, because when Margie trades it with them, they're not like, what is this crap? Like, it's foreign, but they know what it is, and I'm assuming that the colony...
They have something like metal, don't they?
Yeah. They have this stuff that's...
They have the stone, and then they have all these magnetic forces, too.
Right. But, I mean, I'm assuming the original colonists who were there would have had some sort of metal implements.
Right, you would think, even if now they're not using metal. They definitely were.
Like, they had some. If they came in a spaceship, the spaceship...
Though she does mention a lot about plastic. I'm like, you don't have a plastic spaceship. I don't know.
It's the future. They can have a plastic spaceship.
They can't. I will not suspend my disbelief that after all of this is where I draw the line.
That's it. Women can get each other pregnant through psychic finger touching, but...
I'm okay with that, really.
Plastic.
Yeah, I have a problem with that.
Okay. Alright. That's fine. We all need to draw the line somewhere.
Hold on. Here we go. Goth.
That's so easy to remember.
They're like the Entlake people. Anyway.
Is it spelled G-A?
G-O.
It's spelled G-O-T? See, that's interesting.
That's very interesting.
Oh, like goth,
Marilyn Manson.
No. Right, no, but
the Visigoth.
Because of the Visigoths, like the old school goths. That's interesting.
That's where I was going with that.
Okay, well, I figured, but I wanted to clarify.
But they are wave around in a forest.
It could be both, but like that's, and especially since we know that there's the anthropologist there.
Absolutely.
Who's gonna know that and recognize that. Like that's
so. The coolest thing for me, of the whole book, my favorite thing I think is that the memory, like that preserved memory that occurs with the virus, and the way that people can go back in time and relive the experiences of their ancestors, language on the planet, and you have all of these old words like goth, right? You have all of these old words like Olvos to mean waterfall, right? You have that.
And you have a lot of, like languages that people do not
speak. Dead languages now. pretty much, spoken there. I mean, Gaelic and Welsh and whatnot. Just languages that are not widely spoken.
And that are so, like, they're so... Obscure and diverse, like, like Mexican.
Oh,
it's kind of like vaguely...
yeah.
Right, it's like vaguely Mayan almost.
Yeah.
Like that, and then the people around that area have a lot of Gaelic. Like, their names are, like, super Gaelic.
Right, yeah.
And those are not two things that go together very often.
And so and the compounded memory kind of makes that possible. Is really interesting, that you don't have to understand it to feel the language. I really sit there and talk to them and understand it. And I liked that it was so easy for Margie to understand what they were saying.
Right.
Because there's nothing more frustrating than reading a novel where the main character's like, what the hell are you saying?
Right, like there's some words that she finds foreign that are like foreign concepts, but...
Yes, and I want it to be explained to me. I don't want to have to go, oh... This main character's so stupid, even I could figure it out, and she
Exactly,
couldn't.
Like, what is this thing? Like, the long process of language acclamation. She comes there prepared.
Prepared, yeah. Doesn't. Danner doesn't.
Danner
I keep calling her Tanner. Danner does not. She has problems understanding lots, comparatively. In the last 5 years, they've seen each other like twice, so that's lots.
But yeah, like, even the people who are used to contact with, you know, the mirrors and the people from the company, still she has trouble. Right, talking with them. And it's really nice to have the narrative, and have her be someone who can just, like, quickly get over that kind of thing. And I like that it also mentions specifically at the beginning that she studies a lot of different dialects.
Right, and that she's trained for this, right? She's trained for this exact journey, whether or not she knows it. She's trained for it. And how well prepared she is really comes out. This is really a great book. I think if I ever teach a science fiction class for young adults, this is something that is definitely appropriate for young adults. All the sex scenes are really toned down.
Right.
And the violence really better than reading The Jungle in terms of, like, gut-wrenching. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm reading this. There's some violence, but I really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot to be gained in terms of, like, talking about.
Also, I feel like a really good book for, like, you know, your standard, like, questioning our preconceptions about culture and humanity. Like,
absolutely.
You know, like, well, this world is all female, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know?
This would be great in a humanity anthropology course, but just a general humanities
Even
course.
ethics and
Ethics,
anthropology.
absolutely. Ethics, there's lots of decisions going on. Oh, man, we're almost done. Do we have any more questions we need to wrap up?
We had one more.
Is it any good? If it's not any good, I'm content to drop it.
I'm gonna look. As soon as it's not monolithic. It's not monolithic.
I know. It was...
Because that's something that happens a lot in, you know, sci-fi novels. And, like, I understand, like, having, like, a language, like, common, or, like, there's, like, one overarching language. But
well, in this case, we were able to read it and comprehend what people are saying, even when it was, like, soestre. I was like, oh... Soestre, it sounds like sister. Like, I know it means something. And then also the TRE, and, like, the fact that it's, you know, related to all these moons. Like, let's not even talk about the fact that this planet has 3 moons and what that has to do with women and their monthly cycles. Yeah.
There's things we could say, but...
There's all kinds of symbolism, which is interesting, but, yeah. We can figure things out from context a lot, just because there's Old English and then Old, you know, Spanish and Portuguese and all of that stuff that we might be familiar with.
Right. And
I'm not familiar with the Gaelic, but maybe you are. And then, like, as you read it, you get a different experience because it seems to harken back to your experiences. And in that way, we're brought into the
familiar enough that the alienness is, like, stands out, but it's enough that you can, like, get over it and move in. So, you know.
Yeah.
All right, the other question you have that we haven't covered yet is what is going on with the company and the mirrors.
So yeah, so I had some questions about the mirrors, and I don't know that anyone can answer. It's answerable or really an accurate question. Well, it's really good. Great. You gonna sit here and play Drunk Sorry?
Drunk Sorry? I don't know.
Yes, wake up early. So the company, basically, we have the idea that men are involved. It's kind of only supposed to explore and observe. Oh, wait, we're going to mine everything off of this planet. Right, she goes to Beaver, and she's like, guys, The natives, they're
Natives
hostile. Will bite your head off.
They want you to stop that.
How's that for a metaphor?
Beaver.
On beaver, they will bite your head. Anyway, she tells them, in her professional opinion, like, hey, don't mine here. Like, let's find another planet. And they're like, fuck you, we're going to mine here anyway. And so we get the idea that they're doing this stuff. There's some profit involved in the fact that they have everybody in their pocket, like the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the SEC is supposed to be like a Starfleet kind of thing.
Yeah,
where
so the SEC is Starfleet, and then the company is the company.
If they're like, oh, there's this deadly alien thing. Let's go poke it with a stick and see how it can raise us money. You know, stuff like that. Like, and
absolutely.
You know, and like when Danner sits down and figures out, okay, it would be more cost effective for the company to abandon us than to transport us. And to keep us up. Which is nice. She's like, oh, they're not going to blow us up, not because of an ethical thing, but because it's more cost effective.
It's more cost effective for them not to blow us up.
Which I thought was a good rationale. Like, I was like, I don't know if they would leave here until she's like, it's more cost effective.
I was like, I buy that.
All right, now I'm on board with that.
Yeah, otherwise it's like, oh, just blow the bitches up. Like, not because I want them to die. But no,
and she's still like, they would blow up the Aristrata.
Yeah.
They'd still blow them up.
Yeah. So that's cool. A company. Okay, so either the mirrors are like from a specific planet, like where they go to this. So that's one. They are from a specific planet where they have their own culture, and it's like Sparta, right? Where it's like all warlike all the time, all business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 2, they go to this planet in the academy, like their military training, and then they become mirrors, like Navy SEALs or
right.
3, they're fucking aliens, right?
It would be fun if they were aliens.
Yeah, like, that'd be great. Like, not humans that colonize this other planet and then divert. That's the case. 4, they're androids. And I think there's some support for the idea that they're androids. I don't know how far I'd go with the androids, but I think it's in there. I mean, the idea that they've got this mirrored visor and that Margie has nightmares that Danner's going to have a blank face. And obviously they can die. Obviously they can bleed. Things can go wrong. But there's this idea that, you know, they need to, like, recharge. I mean, humanity there.
Right.
There's some physical body that's human, but I get the idea that they plug themselves in at night.
Well, and there's the sort of, like, distrust and, like, alienation Margie feels from all of the mirrors, which is fed by her earlier experiences, but also, like, she feels like she's the only...
Absolutely. Like, for a long time, she feels like she's the only person with, like, actual thoughts.
Right.
And everyone's just working on instinct besides her.
Like, when she first talks to the Trotta, and the lady is like, oh, you're an orphan here, aren't you? Like, she's a singular...
on the planet.
Like, so I can definitely see the kind of android thing. Like, they're human-like, and maybe they're even developed by humans, but they're not quite. And it, like, the use of the term mirror,
and it reflects back what you want to see.
Right, and they're a reflection. Why? Because otherwise, why would you call your, like, security personnel mirrors? Like, what's the...
Well, so I mean, there's an explanation for that. It's that they have the mirrored visors, right? But troublesome and interesting. I think it's interesting how much mirrors, like, in daily life for women, like, are a thing. Like,
that's also
look in
true.
mirrors, right?
That's true.
So Margie looks in the mirror to support what she knows. The mirror argues with her. Shuttle, the Estrada, she doesn't feel like the women she's orbiting with are human.
Right.
She feels alien from them.
Right. She always feels very, very disconnected from everyone else around her.
Which, of course, is part of the development of the story, right? Or are they women? Are they mirror? Like, what?
Like, what are they? Like, are they as alien to Margie as the inhabitants of G-Bar to the mirrors? Because, like, and there is that point where Danner is like, for the first time, she realizes she thinks of the inhabitants are women who do, you know,
who do
things like other women do that, like, I do.
Yeah.
And, well, she uses the term women and not human.
It's on the other side. Turn it down on the side. Just click the little thing and the sound will go off. It's okay.
It's okay. But, like, that...
Go find Perry.
But then as women, not the first time I thought of them as human.
But as women, yeah, absolutely. Because there is the idea that there are humans, there's populations, but not the women. Yeah, women is used very powerfully in this, and power to you, but thank you for not using women with a Y. Because these are women, they're just women. They're not super powered women, though they do have powers that come from this harrowing disease of them, like 23%.
Right, like there's reasons it's not just like a Wonder Woman kind of thing. We come from this island of super
mascara.
Right, and there's like there's consequences. There's like drawbacks to how they get this. It's not there's a trade like you get this, you're gonna die.
Well, most of the men die, and then like 23% of the women. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of people.
There's a trade-off.
Healthy because it's in the DNA. It changes your DNA. So it is like a retrovirus.
But what if you flip the wrong switch? While you're switching, flipping, that just means you're gonna accidentally do something really terrible.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I want to reread that part. I was like, I'm having a really hard time suspending my disbelief. Though I really liked the idea that Margie was finally like ready to settle down and like have this thing. And I liked the body horror that occurred right when she like realized it had happened. She was like, "Oh my god, I'm pregnant!" Like, fuck, I know I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant. Shit.
No plan B. But yeah, it was hard for me to suspend my disbelief. So I'd like to reread it again, just kind of knowing it for what it is and where it ends up after that.
Although that is interesting. Like, does anyone on Jeep ever get or consider getting an abortion?
Right. Well, it's Margie does. She's like, well, I know I could shut this off. Like, she's panicking, but I don't know if anyone, like a Jeep native would do it.
Right, because they are more
because it's a choice also for them.
Right.
Whereas Margie did it because she felt like she had to make the choice, and like she didn't know the full burden of it, right? Because she never had been able to choose to get pregnant before.
Right, because there's no real way to actually like a political sort of maneuvering.
Yeah, and there is political maneuvering, like, okay, you have to really try to get pregnant, like, for real. And then you either do your duty or you don't, but,
it doesn't seem like
there's no rape.
There's no rape.
Right.
There's no way to impregnate someone
like that. I mean, there could be rape.
Right. There's no way to get accidentally pregnant.
No. It doesn't seem like it, unless somebody put you in a trance kind of thing, but it seems like you'd have to be receptive to that. Mentally. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're about done here for the night. So. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Hopefully this wasn't too boring. And next time we will post questions ahead of time.
Right. Well, and this time
it's Ender's Game.
So we are.
This was our first reading for both of us for Ammonite. So I give it 2 thumbs way up. It was great.
Yeah, it was really good.
I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, just because I read a lot of over-the-top feminist shit because I'm in English studies.
Because you're a graduate student.
And sometimes I just want to not think about the fact that I've been oppressed my whole life. And this book, surprisingly, let me do that in kind of a fun way instead of like, oh my god, I need to be all feminine.
I didn't have to be upset, and it was still super, feminist, but I wasn't having to be sad the whole time. I was like, oh, this is really
You could actually care about the characters while still being a feminist.
Right. It was great. I was like, oh.
So, more books like this, I think I'm really excited to read a lot more. This makes a lot of things possible, too, in the future. Now, Ender's Game came before this, so that'll be interesting. We're going to go back a few steps in terms of, talking about gender and sex, because this is, very open about it. And Ender's Game, of course, is
super
not.
Repressed.
Ask some questions about sexuality, gender, of course, women's position in the military, and we will be referring back to Ammonite to deal with some of those questions.
This will be a good context.
It's a very good context.
Especially in the anthology, this Ender does deal with what's basically an all-female
Absolutely.
civilization.
Yes, I have an article for you to read.
Oh, I want to read that article.
Awesome. So we will see you guys next week, same time, same bat channel, and time. And we will be in Colorado. Probably in my friend Bobby's apartment. So we will chat you there. We'll try to be about as drunk as this, maybe with a better script.
Yes, we will be. I'm always ready to talk about
Ender's Game. So, card version, or he reads aloud is definitely worth a listen because it's kind of...
There's a lot of sexual undertones to stuff if you read it yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot more explicit when you listen to him. It's an enlightening experience, at least for a chapter. So do give it a shot. If you can find a version, maybe your local library has it. You might be able to purchase it on iTunes, I believe.
iTunes, Audible. You can definitely get it on
Audible, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. It definitely helps listening to an author read their stuff. You get a better picture. You do. You really do. Of how they were thinking about it.
Though reading it is the first way I read it just like on the book form, and I liked it much better when I read it. So
I was younger when we first read it.
I wasn't very young when I read it. I read it when I was 10 or 11 times now. So
yeah, I read it first when I was maybe 11.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It was one of baby's first sci-fis. So.
So see you guys later. Yes. Hopefully you tune in. If not, we'll record this and get it posted to YouTube. And thanks for listening. Post your questions to us. We'll follow up any follow-up questions. Yeah, let us know. Things that you'd like to hear more about. More gender, more sexuality, whatever. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Deuces.
This is pretty good.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Click the stop.